I'm Steve from Critical Research. We sponsored this evening's do. And thank you to Lucy, thank you to ICG for letting us sponsor this. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to Cate's talk, and we hear so much about technologies and all the bits we do and the research we do in our current lives, so it should be a really interesting one. I'll take 90 seconds of your time, that's all, I promise. So Critical Research, it's our 25th year this year. I've been there for a while, not 25 years, although I had hair when I started, in fairness. And we're a full service agency. We do everything online, qual, the whole bits and pieces. I suppose the things that slightly set us apart a little bit is that we work a little bit like consultants. So we don't have departments. We haven't got a scripting department. We don't have a DP department. All the bits and pieces that come with any sort of field and tower project or even full service, we do ourselves. So for better or for worse, we do the presenting, also have scripting and the DP. The other thing we have is in 2015 we took over RSM. That sounds hostile, it wasn't hostile. We took over RSM, which were an agency in London Bridge. All their staff remained, but they added a fully international telephone element to us. So we do interviews all over the world from, with native language speakers from London Bridge. So that, along with our kind of online, our quant call, is everything that we do. And I think most of us are reasonably nice people as well. Although if we talk afterwards and you don't think that, then please don't tell me. Just keep your bubble there. That's all I'm going to say. So, Kate, looking forward to your talk. So, thank you.
Right, the ride, and if you liked it, you swiped your wristband, and that connected to the Facebook fan page, and then everybody could see which were the most popular rides, and they created a buzz, all the social media that came with that, and of course, from their point of view, it helped them understand the back office, what staffing we should do. So if there's a need for, oh, we better get there because it's a really popular one, because now we've amplified the popularity of it, it's going to get even busier. So it was a really nice example to think about how technology is changing our lives. So she's going to talk to us today about technology, which is a big fat word, and give us some nice up-to-date examples, hopefully food for thought, and afterwards there'll be time for questions and drinks and nibbles as well. So over to you, Kate. That's right.
Thank you very much. Good stuff. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Kate. And yes, I'm so impressed by all the things you remembered. So everyone bear in mind there will be a test in 7 years. We've discussed today. So I'll try and stand over here so I'm not fully in your way. But essentially we're going to be talking about how the future is going to be very, very different from today and the past as well. So there's a lot to talk about. Before we get into that, I can introduce myself briefly. Everything my company does is about the future. We help people like you and companies like this understand what's coming next, some of the biggest, most important things to be aware of, and also some of the actions that you can take to get ahead. And there is a lot of change ahead, but I think we can boil it down into a few key things to look at so we can make sense of this and you can take advantage of it. I do what I do because I believe that there's a better way to do things, essentially. That every year there are all sorts of new technologies and new ways of doing business that mean that businesses can improve their profits, but also do better by their customers and their employees as well. So, personally, I'm an optimist. I think the future is bright. But a lot of what we're going to talk about this evening is based around this chart. This is my sketch chart for how we perceive change today. People standing up in the back, it's basically a triangle for those of you who can't see. So we perceive change happening in a linear fashion. Every year we expect things to get a little bit better than they were the year before. We expect our businesses to grow a little bit more. So over time things to improve in this way. But actually, the forces shaping our world are no longer really following this trajectory. They're following one that looks more like this, an exponential growth curve, where every year certain tools that we now have access to double in capability. And they start progressing quite slowly, but before too long they're really transforming everything. And probably the best known example of an exponential technology is processing power, and that's why the smartphone in your pocket today is actually smarter than the technology that put man on the moon back in the 60s. So it's a bit of a shame that we just played Candy Crush Yeah, so these technologies are doubling in capability, but at the same time, once it doubles in performance, actually to access the last version of that technology, you can actually access that for half the price. So that's why there's now a smartphone on the market that's twice as good as the original iPhone, and it now costs £6, whereas the original iPhone costs, what, £400, I think? So these are examples of the exponentials behind processing power. But what people don't realise often is that there are a lot of other technologies that also follow similar growth curves, these exponential growth curves. And so these are really the forces that are going to transform our world going forward. There are lots of other trends at stake, but when I was asked to only speak to you for half an hour, I thought we have to focus on this. These are really the things to look to. So I can give you a couple more examples of how these exponentials are at play. I'm sure we've all seen a 3D printer by now, and they seem interesting, but in their current state, they're not going to change the world. They're very slow, they're pretty basic in terms of the forms that they make. Now there's the Carbon 3D on the market. This is a 3D printer that uses a slightly different production technique to be 100 times faster than the 3D printers we're used to. And the University of Sheffield is working on a 3D printer that it believes will rival injection moulding before too long, so producing small plastic items at the rate of about 1 a second. So still not quite as fast as injection moulding, but certainly comparable. And sorry, for the people at the back, I'll talk you through these examples. As we discussed, prices dropping as well. So back in 2000, it cost just over £2 billion to sequence an entire strand of human DNA, to sequence a single person. If you were to do that this year, the price has dropped to about £700. Come 2035, as that price halves and halves and halves, it will actually cost more to flush your toilet than it will to sequence your own DNA. And I imagine the insights we can get from that will also double and double and double. So we'll be able to know a huge amount about our bodies, what's going on by that point. Green energy is another example. So a kilowatt of green energy back in 2000 used to cost around 80p. This year it's about 3p, so comparable to fossil energy. And come 2035, or I think even before, is going to be virtually free. So actually, in some ways, we won't need to worry about energy efficiency. We can leave the lights on all night and not feel bad about it because it's all being produced sustainably and abundantly as well. So all this technology is definitely a big part of the puzzle.
So can we ask questions now, or do you prefer at the end?
Oh, I think we'll probably wait till the end.
Okay, fine.
Do you mind? Because otherwise we won't get through it.
Yeah, I can sometimes get so many questions, it takes an hour and a half to get through something, so we can definitely talk about questions afterwards. That's good. So the other thing, though, that technology is bringing about is a whole new wave of human creativity and human innovation as well. So as it becomes smartphones and also internet access become cheaper and also more widespread, we're going to see more people coming online. At the moment, only half of the world's population is online. And so in about 15 years' time, almost anyone who wants to be will be able to join this global internet community. Projects, or there's a Google project to put, I think, floating balloons all over the planet to make internet access, give global coverage for internet access and make it free as well. But the thing that happens is as soon as someone has one of these, has a smartphone in their hand, they can go off and learn almost anything they want to learn. So there are free language courses online at the moment, free coding skills classes. Really prestigious universities like Stanford are offering multi-unit courses, so you can learn, I think, the basics of being a lawyer or accounting through their free services. And once people have learned almost anything they want to learn, they can then, of course, sell their skills online, but they can also offer their own opinions, skills, and points of view to our global community. And it's been shown that the more overlapping points of view, the more new ideas come about from that. So having the other half of the world online, I think we're going to see far more innovative ideas come about, and actually, so this rate of change and this rate of growth and improvement is going to accelerate even further. So it's a quick overview of some of the drivers of change, and in the rest of this presentation I can talk to you about what actually I think is going to change. We can drill into these things in a bit more detail, talking about how in some ways humans can become smarter, we can find better answers to some of our questions now. Whether we actually become more intelligent or not is another matter, but we can ask better questions. The rate of change itself is also going to speed up, and with that, to a certain point comes more uncertainty. But overall, on an individual level, I think life is going to become better. Our quality of life, I think, is also going to exponentially improve. We'll be able to access more services for less money. And we'll finish by talking about how you can adopt a new mindset. With things moving faster than ever, how can businesses make sure they're ahead of their competitors and they're going to thrive in this new future? So, 25 minutes, let's go. Okay, so first of all, talking about how we can become smarter. And things are getting really interesting at the moment because we have more ways than ever to track and measure all sorts of things about our world. And the boundaries, I think, between quantitative and qualitative data are beginning to blur in a very interesting way, to the point where we can actually measure our moods and emotions. IBM and Jaguar teamed up to provide one of the most holistic measurement projects last year at Wimbledon, where they were, almost you could name something to measure at Wimbledon and they were measuring it. So they were looking at all the players' movements, the speed of their serve, where people were in the grounds, the audio levels in the grounds, the tweets inside and outside all over the world. And then they started to make an emotional map of how people were feeling overlaid against particular matches and moments in the different matches. And they got even more data on this by asking certain members of the crowd to put on a wearable that measured their heart rate and their activity levels. So if they all leapt up to cheer at one time, they could measure that as a particularly exciting moment. And although this project in itself may not seem game-changing, I think it hints at the potential of what's coming next. This is, well, one of the more boring wearables I've come across recently. There are wearables that can measure your skin temperature, or your breathing, or the tone of your voice, or even your brain waves as well. So I can envisage a point, at this point, a lot of consumers are wearing a lot of these things to track their own moods, to see how they can help them reduce stress or improve their mood overall. But I can absolutely envisage a point where different market researchers ask to buy data off customers or ask a certain group of people to wear some of these things as part of the trial, and you can start to measure emotions alongside all the other quantitative things that you're interested in. Qualitative and quantitative are blending further. This is another example through Echo Nest. Echo Nest is owned by Spotify, and now Echo Nest can essentially analyse all of Spotify's tracks. And sorry, this is a little bit small for you, but it looks at quantitative things like the beats per minute and the length of the track, but it also gives a number to more subjective things like the poppiness of a track, or its danceability, or its energy. And this link here, actually, if you want to go online, you can enter any Spotify playlist and see how popular your music taste is, if you want. So there's a kind of interesting consumer use for this. But actually, what Spotify are mainly using Echo Nest for is to sell all these trends to music companies. So they can access this data, they can see whether certain countries like certain sounds or not, which ones are trending, and therefore which acts they should sign, which tracks they should put on different albums. Yes, certain things that were once represented by a subjective point of view can now in some ways be quantified. And it's easier than ever to visualize these things in interesting ways and create interactive platforms that bring this data to life. So I think that's potentially for professional organisations, the next stage for this is perhaps moving from static reports that maybe answer a handful of questions in a very specific way to more interactive platforms that can call in data live as new data points emerge and actually let a brand or a client access that platform and pull out any piece of information they want. Or if you have a presentation, you pull out the most recent data and go and present it to them. And at the same time that small businesses can access the tools that were once only the realm of bigger businesses, we're also now seeing tools that were once the realm of small businesses becoming available to individuals for free without a very big use of how to interact with data at all. Importio is a new-ish tool. They've recently unveiled a free version. And it's a very, very easy to use system. You can use it with about half an hour's training through a YouTube video. It's a system that lets you type in a URL and it will then scrape out all the data from this. So you can very quickly, I don't know, put in a Rightmove page and see all the houses near your house and what they cost and different things. So there's a version of that that's free and can let people with a little bit more training scrape hundreds of web pages just in a few clicks if they want to. And then Tableau Public is another free tool that lets users visualize that data and turn it into other interactive platforms. So this screen grab here is an interactive tool about covering all sorts of Airbnb data from San Francisco. And this, I have to say, I wouldn't be able to pull this together. It is, in some ways, quite complicated. But I was thinking about this, and this, if I was to do this a year ago, I would have to go off onto various coding courses over a number of months to work out how to do this, how to get the information and turn it around. But here, this can be done in about 2 days now using free tools. So that's the difference, really. And I think there's an opportunity for all of us to move up the value chain here. So, yeah, consumers stepping into the role of small businesses stepping into the role of big businesses, and all of us becoming smarter and more intelligent in the process. That's the idea. Right, so we can now talk about how the world is speeding up. The rate of change itself is increasing. And of course, this is based on all of these exponentials. Ray Kurzweil, who is one of the most influential advisors to Google, puts it perfectly when he says we won't experience 100 years of progress this century. It's going to feel more like 20,000 years of progress. And that's because we as individuals can do more. The tools themselves, some tools can be set to auto-run, to gather information and do all of these things. We can rework this quote maybe and think, actually in the next 10 years we're going to see more like 100 years of progress. So just to give you an example of this, we can look at one of the world's most successful linear businesses. This is Hilton Group. Again, this is a sketch graph. So they started about 100 years ago, buying more and more hotels, getting better and better at their marketing. So by this year, they're expecting to sell 186 million room nights. And no surprises, I'm going to compare this to Airbnb. But what I do think is, not exactly surprising, but it's interesting to see it in a visual form, is that Airbnb started less than 10 years ago. And as of this year, they're expecting to sell 139 million room nights. So if you're sitting at the back of the room, you almost can't see Airbnb on this chart because their growth has been so fast. And any which way you look at it, they're doing very well. Airbnb, its valuation has already topped that of Hilton. Its profits by 2020 are going to be double that of what Hilton's are today. They're doing incredibly well. So our lives as businesses can change overnight almost now, or certainly within or 10 years. There's a lot of change here. And even on the product level, innovation and times to market are speeding up, partly because of exponential technologies, but also partly because of exponential ways of thinking and doing business as well. Local Motors is a relatively small, unknown company, but they are posing a big enough threat to the established automobile makers at this point. This is one of their latest models. It's the world's first 3D printed car that is about to be released onto the market shortly. But really what I find most interesting about them is that their way of doing business is quite different to the norm. They have 100 full-time employees, and they make use of all sorts of online platforms to invite different enthusiasts to come in and provide potential solutions to different aspects of the car. So one person came up with the overall design of this car, other people worked out how the wheels would fit to the... I actually don't know what it fits next to. I'm the kind of woman who knows what colour a car is, but not anything that happens underneath the bonnet. But whatever the wheels connect to, someone has worked that out. So the point here is that because they're accessing all of these thousands of enthusiasts around the world, they can much more quickly get access to the best solution to a different problem. And whereas it normally takes about 8 years from the initial idea of a new model of car to it being on the road, Local Motors have reduced that time to around 1.5 years. That's 4 or 5 times less, I believe. And not only that, they've massively reduced the cost. So it normally costs around £2 billion to bring a car to market. They've done it for £2 million. So that's 100 times less. So again, it's all sorts of new and interesting things just around the corner. So this is my Lord of the Rings shot with them stepping into the unknown. I think this is what we're all about to do. There's a lot more uncertainty in the world, in some respects now. It's thought that by 2025, 40% of the Forbes 100 top companies in America will no longer exist. And you can see why with companies' growth rates like Airbnb. It's very easy to see how the future is going to be quite different. But we can be quite optimistic now, I think. On an individual level, I actually think our lives are going to be much better than they are now. And I know we've talked a lot about technology, and it's easy with this, I think, to imagine that we all live connected to virtual reality systems come 2025, we'll all eat pills, all of those dystopian fantasies that the sci-fi films show us. But I think actually technology can become so sophisticated that it allows us to return to a more natural way of living, I think, through certain innovations like this. This is MIT's Food Computer, which is an open source project. Any of us can download the plans and start building one in our back garden. This is essentially a climate-controlled space that lets us mimic the climate of any place on Earth. They actually talk about climate recipes that let users download the amount of sunlight, the temperature, the air humidity, and the nutrients in the soil of particular places on Earth. So you can build one that's the size of a microwave or the size of this room or a warehouse if you wanted to, but potentially, if we were so inclined, we could have 3 on the roof of this building. One could be growing Guatemalan coffee, one could be growing New Zealand apples, another could be growing Greek olives. And it would all be beautifully produced, so we'd need less pesticides to do so, and we could just tweak the recipe so it could be really, really tasty as well. So technology actually enables some quite exciting things, and this can all be made locally, sustainably, and affordably too. As I said before, the tools that once were available to large corporations or governments are now becoming available to us on a more individual, perhaps community level. This is the U-Check from BioSense. This is essentially a little plastic widget that combines the functionality of your smartphone to let your smartphone analyse the results of a urine strip. So with this, it can analyse about 25 different conditions, I think. So they're kidney or liver issues, complications in pregnancy, diabetes, stuff like that can all be tested through the system. This costs about £20 and replaces a system used in labs that costs around £1,800. And so I can very easily see a point where maybe not everything will be available to us personally. We may not scan ourselves every day for cancer, but like we used to take our photos to Boots to be developed, we might be able to pop into Boots for a quick cancer scan before work. And it's very exciting what's happening. And so because of developments like this, we're going to see our lifespans extend. It's actually thought that by the year 2029, for every year of life you would expect after that, you can actually expect to have 2 years of life. So today, if you're 40, you might expect to live to be 82, but actually you could expect to live to be about 106, I think. So if you're born in the year 2029, perhaps you could live to be 160. Kind of all gets a bit hazy after 2035 because things are developing so much further. But yeah, it's exciting. Ooh, is everyone imagining being really old? Is this what's happening? Sorry? Yeah. Okay, we'll see. There won't be a test. There won't be a test when you're 106. It'll be fine. So life for us in the West is pretty exciting, but also life for people all over the world is going to get much better as well. And in some ways, I think people in developing countries will be able to leapfrog some of the developments that we've had here in the West. This is one prototype design. This is a gridless, an off-grid toilet. So it doesn't need any water to come in, any water to take anything away. And actually it turns all of its inputs into useful materials. So it turns wee into clean, drinkable water and salt. It turns poo into ash and electricity. So some people are talking about being able to plug a mobile phone into this toilet. And actually using poo is a very important resource. But yeah, I think 40% of the world currently lacks access to clean sanitation, and millions of people die every year because of that. So something like this could be, change everything for people. Okay, so we'll finish by talking about how, with all this change ahead, how we can best take advantage of it and get ahead. And I think this is really important. This is a very successful Silicon Valley investor who says that any company designed for success in the 20th century is doomed to failure in the 21st. And I don't want to be quite that negative, but I think it's time to change. It's time to embrace some of this stuff before it wipes us out, I think. And this has been an education for me as well. I'm looking into taking advantage of more of these technologies as a result of doing this work for you. But one of my top recommendations for any business is really to start to think about how you can make the most of some of these exponential technologies. And I'm aware, I think that most of you are market researchers, so you may not think that all of these technologies are relevant to you, but I think more of them are relevant to you than you might think. Amazon is a great example. A lot of us just think of them as an online retailer. They think of themselves as a tech company more than a retailer. And they've made it their business to investigate most of these technologies and to look into how they can take advantage of it and be first in their industry to innovate in this space. And I don't think it's a surprise that actually, because they rely on so many of these exponential technologies, that over the years their revenues have grown exponentially as well, and their profits are beginning to do so in a similar way too. So start to think about how you can make the most of this. But also I think our thinking can change as well. And a simple way of describing one of the most fundamental shifts I think we could all go about doing is, well, the traditional way is to work from an inside-out perspective. So, I don't know, if you ask me to come up with a new product for you, I might go off with my team into a small room and come out with what I think is a wonderful new product for you, and then test it and find out how it actually works in reality. This is now flipping to more of an outside-in approach, where companies, a bit like Local Motors, are inviting ideas from everyone all around the world, and they're bringing them into the business, at which point they look at all the numbers, filter the best ideas to the top, and work out from there again. Also, businesses are incorporating research alongside their design process, so the two things are becoming simultaneous. So I can talk you through a few examples of this, moving from simple ideas to far more complex ones. This is ThoughtWorks. They're actually a software company who came up with the agile methodology. They produce software for all sorts of companies, including retailers. And instead of doing the standard approach of running workshops in a small room, coming out with their ideas, what they decide to do is put their ideas in front of customers as soon as they possibly can. And it can be a case of doing a simple switch like this. This is them holding a workshop on the shop floor of one of their clients during opening hours. So as they come up with a new idea, if they realise they don't have all the information they need or a complete customer perspective, they can simply lean behind them, tap on the shoulder of a customer who happens to be walking past, and ask them what they think, ask them which version they prefer, and keep moving from there. So insight is built in to the design process. Lego took on a more ambitious version of this, where they set up an online platform to invite ideas from people from all over the world on new ideas on new products they could make, basically. They've had hundreds and hundreds of ideas. Any idea that gets more than 10,000 votes from the crowd will be considered by the Lego team. I think that's more to do with licensing than anything else. They've had a Ghostbusters car that was made, a model of the Concorde, a model of the Big Bang Theory set. All of these things have gone into production. But there's something interesting about not only having potentially a better idea because they have access to more ideas, but being able to test how the potential reaction to that idea and actually having a market lined up for that product before it's even released. So this is another way that companies can speed up their time to market. And some companies are becoming so agile and so lean and so focused on what's going on in the outside world that there's almost nothing inside the company itself. This is a slightly complicated example, so bear with me, but the world's first leaderless organisation now exists. It's called the Distributed Autonomous Organisation. It's actually a limited company, and essentially what it does is it invests in other companies, and it earns a profit on its investments. The company was devised by a tech company who came up with the structure of how it would work, and then coded everything, and then walked away. When it opened its doors, it invited people, again, from all over the world to sign up and donate some of their money into a pot in order to become a member. I think they raised over $150 million through that system, and so that pot can now be invested anywhere that its members choose to do so. So they use an online interface to vote for which things it thinks they should collectively invest in and whether they like the terms of the deal. When the money is sent to the company that they're loaning the money to, it's actually distributed through Bitcoin or through the blockchain. And the beauty of the blockchain is that the terms of the contract can kind of be woven into the transaction, so it needs a lot less administration. And almost the payments back can be automated as well. And so this is the reason why they don't actually need any full-time internal staff at all. And by doing something like this, well, they've got a huge amount of power, but incredibly cheaply, and they're incredibly agile as well. So I'm keeping an eye on this to see how this emerges. Good. Okay, so we've covered quite a few things, I think. But in terms of wrapping up, just a few kind of things to keep in mind based on what we've discussed. Yes, we've talked a lot about technology, but overall I think there's a lot of cause to be cheerful, especially on a personal basis. Even if the robots take all our jobs, I think the smaller amount of money we'll have will actually buy a lot more. So whatever happens, I think we can feel all right with this. But yeah, it essentially gives us more options and more affordably. From a business perspective, I'd absolutely recommend that you start to get to grips with some of these technologies. It is actually quite frightening how some of these technologies can pick up and present a threat where a few months ago you didn't think they were. So start to think about these things, start to think about how they can help you, and actually there are more affordable ways of engaging with these things than you might think, so we can talk about that afterwards. And yeah, exponentials, just bear in mind that it is time to get your head around these things. I think this chap, this very wise man, expresses this in the best way, saying that the greatest shortcoming of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. As I said, things start very slowly and can get a bit scary quite quickly. Just to give you one last example, if we imagine this room is watertight, and I put a drop of water on the ground, and every minute I double the amount of water I put down. After about 20 minutes or so, this room would be 7% full of water. So you wouldn't be best pleased with me, but you wouldn't be that unhappy either. But if we all stayed here for 5 more minutes, we'd all be dead. So I won't do that to you. That wouldn't be a nice way to end my talk. But it just gives you an idea of how something doesn't seem too much of a threat and then can take over, I think. So yes, there's a lot of change ahead, but the smartest thing to do is really to lean in, to start to explore what these things offer rather than ignoring them. And there was another wise man who said that you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And I think a tsunami is coming. So let's go surfing.
Okay, so I'm optimistic and scared at the same time. I'm very optimistic that my mobile phone is going to be charged by my toilet. Very exciting for the future, and it's going to be cheaper to map the genome than flush toilets. So there's a lot of toilet managers. Thank you for brilliant examples. Let's open the floor. I know, Andrew, you already had a question.
Well, firstly, I would say thank you very much. Superb talk. And I completely share your optimism for the future. I think that's exactly right, for all sorts of reasons. I was just going to pull you up one point of detail at the start. We talked about energy costs. Because I wonder what your source. I don't want to get distracted by that because that's just a point of detail. But I think that was wrong because it didn't take into account subsidies and taxation. And also, I couldn't help but point out that your predecessor, you may not know, in the 1950s and 60s, said exactly the same thing about nuclear energy, that it would become too cheap to heat. But my substantive question isn't to do with those points of detail. It's to say, with the picture you've given is of this exponential increase. I wondered how this, you see this interfacing with more bricks and mortar already existing things. I noticed, for example, one of your clients is L'Oreal. So what would they have? How do you persuade them that these technological changes and the exponential curve that you so eloquently described, how would that impact upon their business?
Oh, okay. So we're talking about advice for L'Oreal in terms
well, not
of
necessarily,
this.
but you see the point I'm making.
Yeah.
And another way of putting the same thing would be that in around about the year 2000, when the internet was kind of taking off, there was a small Silicon Valley-based company which has since become successful. Well, that didn't really have much to do with any of this stuff. That was Starbucks.
Right.
Yeah, that was coffee selling.
Yeah.
Do you see the point I'm getting at? Your eloquence is all to do with the technology side, but I wonder how this interfaces with the physical world and our emotional world and the things we buy every day.
Okay, well I think that for any company there are ways of taking advantage of this. So for a lot of product companies, companies, we're starting to talk to them about how they could start operating marketplaces, for instance. Because if they can incorporate a marketplace that then lets all sorts of third parties provide perhaps add-on services or add-on products, potentially within a week they can double the size of their business and the utility of their business. So that perhaps might be the most practical example for a company like that. But it's kind of moving away from stopping thinking about we make foundation or mascara or whatever and starting to think, how can we use all these wonderful new technologies to sell these products in a newer and more exciting way.
So I know nothing about L'Oreal. No axe around there, but so there the analogy might be that instead of selling only cosmetics, they might sell some sort of wearable that might generate perfume, for example.
Yeah, and we were talking about apps that measure the amount of sun exposure, what the sun's doing during the day to kind of say go inside, your skin is being damaged or whatever it is. So yeah, there are other things they can think about in terms of that as well. Yeah. So yeah, there's all sorts of opportunities with this in terms of marketing and selling as well. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay. It's enough for now. Good. Good.
But I don't think they necessarily have to change the product. It's more about how they market. And so, for example, using artificial intelligence to figure out who their customers are and marketing to them that way more, isn't it? So you're profiling your customer and figuring out who they are and contacting them. Because there are so many different beauty products, for example. There's millions of beauty products. How do you get your product to that customer? And it's all about profiling them, I think, with, artificial intelligence.
Or having, being able to serve people more affordably because you're doing it through a kind of chatbot interface rather than a representative who you're paying lots of money to. So they can do an awful lot more using an awful lot less resource, essentially. So yeah, lots of different ideas. Thank you. You did that better than me.
Right first.
Yeah.
It's interesting you said you're already thinking about how you can use those technologies in your business. As you're a consultancy business, and most of us here will have some kind of consultancy business. I was just wondering if you have any examples of how you can apply that in your own business rather than your client's business, like how you're thinking of using it.
Yeah, so essentially using software to track trends. So we're looking at a system that can measure mentions of new things, so within certain spaces that we track. So it's not just a particular uplift of a word that we may, a term that we may already be aware of, but actually the first perhaps 4 mentions from a series of authorities that we trust talking about something new, and then we can see that something has appeared in seed form and we can go off and research more of it. But yeah, that's one way. And finding new ways to contact people is another one, so that's more on the marketing side for us. But there are, don't ever put your email address in the public domain because it's very easy to find it. Don't do that. So yeah, and we're looking, we've been using some open platforms. There's one called Algorithmia that lets anyone rent different algorithms incredibly affordably. So one of the examples I took out of this presentation earlier for the time was a system that lets anyone type in a series or enter a series of image URLs, and then this algorithm goes in and finds the key colours in each image. And so very quickly you could get a sense of which images people are posting, I don't know, for London Fashion Week, and therefore which are the most popular colours, and therefore what your client should do next. And you can, through that platform, you can assess 10,000 images for £3. So, and then also, if the algorithm you want doesn't exist, you can list that on the side for a few £100, and someone will probably step up and design that for you. So that's a really good tool to look at. So we're kind of talking to people and seeing how we can use some of their expertise to improve what we do.
Question here, is there a question? Yeah.
Well, I was going to make a comment earlier, but just commenting on your Starbucks comment.
Yes.
because it has been said that actually what they're really selling is air, i.e. Wi-Fi access. So it's. But I had another question, which I think is possibly a huge one. When I was a lad studying business studies back in the long time ago, it was when automation was coming into manufacturing increasingly, and the prediction, I remember attending a lecture, and the predictions then were quite frightening, that we were all going to be out of work because there was going to be no manufacturing, it was going to be done by robots. I'm now hearing the same things again about skilled jobs, including things like accountants and lawyers, and going to be replaced by, if not robots, algorithms.
Yes.
And we're all going to be out of work, which is sort of, sounds a bit familiar. So, what do you think will happen to replace those jobs? Because we're all working harder than ever now, and employment's higher than it was back in those days.
Yeah.
So we didn't obviously get out of work. So, what happens next?
Right. Okay.
Get that right.
Okay. Yes. So, I think why the previous prediction was wrong is that machines did replace some of what humans can do. It replaced or provided our muscle power in a better, cheaper way. So humans weren't needed to do muscly, active things as much. But up until now, we're still smarter than machines. But what's happening now is that machines are also becoming smarter and faster and cheaper than us in terms of our brains as well. And so in some cases, there's not a lot left. Or if we fast forward maybe 40 years, there won't be, I don't think, a huge amount left for humans to do, which is a very controversial thing.
But that has been said before. Said that exactly the same words have been uttered, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
It's AI, right?
Yes.
I think the interesting thing is what's happened, because you're right, it's about changing from a manufacturing economy. And the point behind the question really is, in those days we were a manufacturing economy, and that's what we did. And now we're not a manufacturing economy because the machines do that, or we offshore it. So, So it's the question then of what are we going to do with all those humans?
Yes.
Especially if they're all living longer.
Well, I mean, the flip side of that is, if you take it further and further and further, that a handful of humans are probably going to own the machines, and they will be very, very rich. And there will be the majority of the rest of us who, and they're actually trialling systems in this space in Finland in a couple of months' time about universal basic income, it's called, where the idea is that we tax the handful of very rich people, so the rest of us can have a small basic income, and that through the use of this technology will buy enough of the standard of living. And they're trialling this in Finland in a few towns where everyone, regardless of their status, all gets a certain amount of money, and they're seeing what that does to people's level of activity and their enthusiasm and mood and stuff like that. So it will be interesting, but I don't know, I was asking myself, trying to imagine what in 40 years' time I could do better than a machine.
Well, I think I can answer you'll be able to think better. I think the problem with this, the premise on which your argument is based to do with artificial intelligence, not you uniquely, I think we collectively sold a false model of what thinking is, and it's a rationalist model which is based on the paradigm is that of the chess playing robot. Isn't it amazing that you've got a degree of intelligence that can beat a grandmaster? Well, no, it's not. Because that's just a tiny, tiny segment of human activity. You know, what about having a robot who could chat up a girl at a party? or decide, how to run a cricket team? Or when to be so bored with a chess match, he scatters the chess pieces and thereby enhances his social reputation amongst a certain sort of people within the room. The whole point is humanity is extremely diverse and complex, and it's just that the rational man image has kind of captured the imagination of a certain sector of the population, and it's given this false image of what artificial intelligence can do.
Yeah, but it's going to get bigger and bigger, and as different machines connect with the knowledge of other machines.
But what will
I
be
think
driving them? That's the point. Because humans have bodies as well as minds.
Yes, but also this computer intelligence can be put into machines as well. But it will be interesting to see how it develops. Can I counter you with another example?
Yeah, please do.
That a man has already coded his Tinder profile. He's taught it what types of ladies he likes and doesn't like, and it auto-swipes for him. When he gets a match, this bot that he's coded starts the conversation, and once he gets something like 5 replies from that woman, he then takes over and messages her personally. So this is already happening to some degree. So who knows what will happen next? But it is quite scary what's happening.
Right, one more question.
It's my coding.
That's what we're exactly.
Just
one more question, lovely.
Sorry, just interested. Many of us here are involved in qualitative research, talking to people, understanding emotions, emotional responses, and things like that. I just wonder how you see the future for that human-to-human interaction in the context of this exponential growth of artificial intelligence and everything we've been talking about. I mean, is there still going to be a role for somebody to talk to somebody else about what they think about what's going on and report it back in real terms that everyone's going to understand? You know, that's important for me.
Yeah.
See Tinder.
Yeah. Yes, and I'm sorry, I should have said this as well. Like, I think a lot of the tools we talked about will complement what you're doing rather than replace certain aspects of what you're doing. So it might highlight certain areas to investigate further. I mean, the question with the emotion or the different qualities of the music is how accurate is it? So just because you see a number on the screen, you don't necessarily, a human wouldn't always agree that this song is dancier than this song, perhaps. So that also waits
So
to
the
be seen.
interpretation
Yeah.
actually requires human input, which is reassuring.
Yeah, but it might just help you really zero in on different areas to
The
focus
targeting,
on, or
absolutely.
a fuller profile of someone to speak to, and secondary correlation. So you're not just looking at Twitter to see whether someone does or doesn't like a brand. You can see what bands or actors, the people who like the brand, also like, and you can layer all this stuff to get a much clearer picture. So you're not being replaced, you can do more. That's the idea.
Hopefully not for too much cheaper though. We can keep our prices.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Any more questions, or else we'll sort of close and we can chat to, you're staying around for a little bit to have a drink, so we can chat informally, but really brilliant. Thank you for inspiring and scaring us at the same time. There's more drinks and nibbles if you'd like to stay around.